Hi, my name is Sean Cutt. I'm the lead level designer at Lost Kiss Entertainment, and I'm working on our game Emberwood. It's our first game, and I'm in the middle of creating what we call prefabs. You know, it's what they're called in Unity is prefabs, and they're basically at this point the goal is to just make some environmental pieces that are already populated with certain pieces of art uh, like stalactites, stalagmites, mushrooms. I'm making a cave environment right now. And it's a little complicated, a little bit more complicated than I would like for our 2D system, just because we're using the experimental 2D lighting in Unity, and that makes it so you can't sort of automatically designate the layer of each object based off of the distance to the camera, which is I've heard that's a good method, but at this point it's not really working for us because we're using this 2D experimental lighting. So in case you see me sort of fiddling with the ordering layer a lot, that's why. But anyway, we'll just kind of getting the hang of that system that I've created in order to kind of deal with that. And what I do is I just start here with this baseline sort of prefab that I have at the z equals 0 coordinate. And then I just kind of, I either copy these assets that are already in here, or I drag in some that we have prefabbed already for what's supposed to be like the default layer. So they have a default right here, starting a layer of default, and then -5 in the order room layer. And then I change that if I want to make this prefab for farther back. So I have to manually change those. So you'll see me fiddling with that a lot. But anyway, I'm just gonna get started and maybe think out loud while I'm doing this. But at the same time, I would really like if anyone has any input on this process, because it is a bit arduous for me. Surprisingly, it's kind of silly, but you'll see me struggling with ordering layer a lot. And I'm just gonna go from here, and let me know if you have any comments. So I'm using what's called a sprite shape profile. It's a really handy tool for 2D world design. Our artist Rubén is awesome, and he created pretty much repeatable patterns that could be used as a border, and then there's a fill texture in here as well that both combine. So you can pretty much have this continuous spline that also gets filled in automatically. This is a feature built in with Unity. It still is a little janky in my opinion. We used to use Fur2D, which was actually better, at least when I was using it last. But we kind of decided to go with this because we're hoping for more support going forward with it if we decide to keep using this into the future. So you might be noticing like all these really cool assets down here that I'm not using. For the most part, this goal at this point is to kind of create the more generic prefabs that we can, just because we want to be able to populate the world with a lot of these and not make them stand out so much. And then any areas that we want to be interesting, we go in and adjust those sort of individually. That way we can make sure that the cool stuff doesn't get sort of washed out, and also we can fill out a lot of areas without it feeling like it's um, you know the main goal is to make sure that the cool areas pop a little bit more. Okay, so yeah, that's kind of it for just this first prefab. Again, trying to make it sort of generic, but I like to just try and pack as much stuff into each one as possible because we're going to be using these a lot. We don't want them to feel very sparse. And I'll go ahead and show you kind of the other ones that I've made so far. So I made this one just before this stream just to kind of warm up. That's the one you just saw me make right there. And then I have this one right here that's kind of fun. You got like a crashed mine cart, some boxes, and this one's probably like the most, this one stands out the most. We got like a little shed here with like a pulley system and a bucket, a pickaxe, or and yeah, another pulley system right there, just to, you know, in case we want some parts of the cave to feel explored and sort of like people were there at some point. And not that this is like the most creative thing ever, but I like to have a little bit of visual storytelling on some of them. I don't have a lot going on right here, just this pickaxe, but sometimes I like to have like, you know, you could see a skull next to a chest or something, and then like a sword stuck into a box. I like to kind of make it seem like, oh, maybe guys fought over a chest and killed each other. So I might make one of those again sometime soon, but for the time being, I just kind of want to stick with more generic looking ones. So something I meant to do was duplicate this before I made all those changes, so I accidentally changed my default palette. It's fine, it wasn't like that interesting. So now I have like a more complicated one here at the start. So yeah, I wasn't really done working on that one, so you could see that, you know, all these Z values are different. And then what I really wanted to do was make this prefab be 6 units back on the Z axis. So the thing about this system that we have going is, you know, that, you know, I'm doing that to like the parent asset does change the Z values of all these, which is great, but it doesn't really change these order in layer values or the sorting in layer the way that we have it set up or the way we want it. So I have to kind of manually do that. So I have to, you know, default is not lined up with, I don't really want anything on the z-axis to be in sorting layer default because I actually want it to show behind the default layer. So I actually want to change it to BG1, and then we have the system going where, you know, you pretty much just multiply the z value by -100, so I'm going to do -600. And then all these guys down here, their z value is going to be dependent on how far back they are. So you'll see like this asset right here is at 0.5. So that would be, imagine, so that, you know, the parent is 6, and then so this item that's behind it is going to be -650. So remember, this is 6, and then we go like another half a unit back and multiply that by 100, another 50, right? So -650. Yeah, the kind of annoying part is, unless I'm specifically saying I want to stick to the ones that are 0.5 back, then I kind of jump around just based off of kind of what I think will look coolest, and that doesn't really end up with a very organized thing. So I like to just go ahead and do that afterwards. You know, not exactly the most efficient way to do it probably, but I don't want that to get in the way of, you know, kind of the flow I'm having with how I want things to look. So basically, after I've put everything in, I go ahead and then I just start moving those to these, which are my signifiers for, okay, they're going to be one layer behind, or sort of the first thing behind the parent. It's not literally -1 because it's actually just, you know, that pretty much a 0.5 is the farthest one, so it'll actually be the third one here. So I have -1 are the objects that are 0 Z units back, and then the ones that are half of a unit back, those are actually the third layer back. So not the most intuitive, but it's just kind of the system I've worked out for myself, and it's primarily just me doing this at this point. So I'm just going to fix that, and then I'll move forward. So basically at this step what I'm doing is, now that I've kind of grouped all the ones based off their Z value, or attempted to do so, if I just left click the top one, shift, and then left click here, I can double check that, okay, they all have the same order and layer, and then they all have the same Z value. If they're not the same, it has this little dash here instead. So I managed to fix that for both, -1 and -2. And now in -3, I noticed, that one of these has a different order and layer. So I'm gonna take a look at that. What's up with that, right? So this one's at -650. That's because that's the one that I fixed first earlier. So it's actually the correct one. All the other ones are at the wrong one. So now that I'm here, I'm going to make all these -650. So, the lower the number and then the negatives, I guess, the higher absolute value. If it's negative, then it's farther back. And then if it is a higher number, so like -430, or sorry, 630, these ones will show in front of these ones here. And then the same principle here, except these are at 0. So I actually just make it -5 instead, just to make sure that, while they're at 0, I don't want to add 0 because if these, oopsie, 605. If these assets have the same order and layer value as the terrain, and it's like if they're BG1 as well, I have to fix that. So if they're BG1 and like -605, and then the terrain was also -605, they would do what's called Z fighting. So that's when you see like two things in a game and they overlap, they start twitching and showing, one shows, the other one shows, one shows, the other one shows. Obviously you don't want that, it looks a little janky, and I don't really know if I'll bother to kind of show you what that looks like, but basically just making sure that they don't have the same order and layer, very important to avoid a sort of glitchy look to the game. And so we got this one at 6 as a Z value of 6, and then all these here -605, that's good, and then they're all BG1 as well. Let's see, these ones are all still at default. So once I do that, they should, go behind those. And then once I do it to these, now everything is in where it should be. Maybe not though. Let's see, what's up with these guys? These guys are showing in front of the terrain. The stalactites, or stalagmites don't look too bad there. These ones don't like, oh, it's because they are at +630. That's why we need this to be -630. Okay, well there we go. Okay, so yeah, kind of a pain, but at the same time, this is the best system I could come up with for making sure that, I have a fairly steady workflow as far as creating them, and then I just have to go back in there and fix them a little bit. So now, if I drag this prefab into the world, it'll actually be 6 units back automatically. And it should have the correct order and layer. So this one was 5, and I named them based off of the Z value just to keep things simple. And then this one is 6, so it's 1 unit behind. All the order and layers are a lower value, so that way I could just drag it in and I have this whole thing that is ready to go. And what I like to do is decorate both the top and the bottom, because while the player might not see the top, it's really nice to go, okay, so I have this one, like as a terrain behind the character here, but then I could just show it as a roof above that area as well. So that's pretty handy. I like to just have those pretty much ordered, have decorations of both the top and the bottom. And then in the case of this one, I did 2 different terrain sprite shapes, and then I decorated both the top and bottom for those. That way the character, I could use this in a lot of situations and it'll still look, it won't come off as repetitive because I could have all these other pieces behind it and in front of it, and that'll kind of camouflage it and make it not so noticeable. So that's kind of our strategy for making prefabs in the background. This wasn't really intended to be a tutorial, but I'm just kind of, showing you our process. And if you guys have any comments about my workflow, let me know. And I have tried, again, I've tried that system where it changes the order and layer based off the Z value or a certain value and let it transform, but it just doesn't work with the 2D lighting. It's literally deactivated in the project settings menu. So yeah, I kind of goofed up a little bit there, whatever, baby's first stream, right? So yeah, leave me a comment, follow us on Instagram, follow us on YouTube. We have a Patreon too if you guys want to start contributing to that. I'm really excited to see where this project goes and look forward to any more community activity. I'd be super stoked. Thank you so much.